Gachiakuta is special, and I mean seriously special. It starts off with the main character Rudo rummaging through the trash. This weird little guy has practically nothing going for him. He's poor, his hands are so burnt that he has to hide his scars with gloves, and he has no friends except for a sweet girl named Chiwa, who will completely forsake him by the end of the first episode. Along with all of this, Rudo lives on a giant floating island called the Sphere that is segregated into a super rich and prosperous side called the upper class with clean streets and safe living, and a disgusting, dangerous side where everybody is descended from criminals that is aptly named the slums. I bet you can guess which side of the island Rudo lives on. And Rudo's father wasn't just any criminal. He was a murderer that was cast into the giant pit where they throw all of their garbage when Rudo was only a child. But none of that stuff really matters, because luckily for Rudo, he has the one thing that no person can take away: trash. Oh wait, never mind. They're actively guarding the trash and trying to shoot him because he stole some of the endless waste that they are literally about to throw away. I get that in a weird way, this is part of the culture of the Spherians, and that they see waste as this evil thing that should be tossed away and forgotten. But as we will quickly find out, there are murderers running around the Sphere, and you're telling me the police have nothing better to do than guard trash and chase down the literal child that just wanted to fix it up? It's like the equivalent of two local gangs having a turf war, while the police are busy arresting those guys that dress up as medieval knights and roleplay ancient battles.
This is Sparta!
Sure, they're a little strange, but there are bigger things to worry about. Let the grown men play with their foam swords and let my boy Rudo play in the trash. But as I said earlier, Rudo isn't just playing in the trash. He's recycling it, restoring things back to their prime and turning things into something new, which is one of the core themes of the show and even the entire concept that dictates the power system, which I really like because it immediately showcases that the show is more than just some edgy revenge fantasy. It has real messages and wants you to appreciate the things you have and rely on care rather than materialism, which we see beautifully conveyed by Rudo's foster father, Regto, after he returns home from his near-death expedition. And every sentence that Regto says feels like a life lesson. He reminds me a lot of Uncle Iroh and is just a super cool character all around. However, as is often the case with shonen, this story just wouldn't feel right if the MC had a loving father figure. And because of this, while Rudo is out completely airballing in front of Chiwa, Regto ends up being murdered by a cloaked man. And Rudo just happens to walk in on his last moments, where Regto tells him something that goes on to change Rudo's outlook on life. He says that the world is a steaming pile of trash, and you have to change it. And if that alone somehow wasn't tragic enough, the cloaked man escapes while framing Rudo for the murder of his own father figure, the single person that he had always relied on. And just like that, Rudo is sentenced to the pit for a crime that he didn't even commit. And here we get a good look at the cruelty of mob mentality and how Rudo's own people, not just the upper class, but the other inhabitants of the slums themselves, immediately forsake him and start to find satisfaction in his punishment. But while every single person is against him and not a soul is willing to hear him out, Rudo calls out to the one person other than Regto who had been kind to him, his only friend, the girl that he is seemingly in love with, Chiwa, who responds by saying that Rudo truly was the son of a murderer and drops the stuffed animal that he had made for her, the same exact time that Rudo himself is dropped like a piece of trash into the endless pit below him. And I have to say that even now, after 4 episodes, this is my favorite scene of the story. There is something so freeing about the moment Rudo realizes it's all over, and he stops trying to plead his innocence and accepts that he has been forsaken, as he looks up at the world he knew with the resolve to make every last one of them pay for treating him not just in this moment, but his entire life like utter garbage. And bang, just like that, the first episode's over. So now that we have the basic context of the show out of the way, I'm gonna start jumping around between the latest episodes and talking more about what actually makes gachiakuta so special. And the first thing I want to start off with is Rudo's character and the symbolic equivalence of his power. Starting off with the ladder. While other cleaners have a single item that they give power to, Rudo can use the power in his gloves to then transfer power to any object he wants, which is very convenient for the plot. Our main character just happens to have a rare power that gives him near limitless potential. However, there is an actual reason that he is one of, if not the only people with this ability, and it is perfect for his character because Rudo appreciates every single item. Not just an umbrella or a pair of scissors, but every individual piece of trash is a treasure to him that he can fix up or make something out of. I mean, it's literally so important to him that he risked his life back on the sphere to rummage through garbage at the very beginning of the story. And that's why he can give power to any object, because he cares about all of them, which is really cool and proves that Rudo's our main character not just because he has some secret power, but because he best embodies the message of the show. Upon reaching the grounds, which is what people call the bottom of the pit, and meeting Engine, a cleaner who fights Trash Beast, we see that Rudo is a very, very immature and selfish boy. He might care a lot about trash, but he seems to have no empathy or manners toward people. He doesn't listen to Engine. He constantly insults him and argues with him, even though Engine is constantly helping him and is the sole reason that he's still alive. And when Engine tells Rudo about the cleaners organization, he says himself the only reason he'll join is to get information and return to the sphere. It's completely selfish and shallow, but within the short amount of time that's passed since then, Rudo has already begun to change and see the flaws within his own worldview. And one of the best examples of this is when he meets Zanka. At first, Rudo acts the exact same way he did when meeting Engine. He literally steals Zanka's treasure, the most important thing to him, without a thought, and then is rude and hostile when Zanka confronts him about it. But you can see there is this moment where Rudo has an epiphany, and for the first time in this story, we see him feel a little bit of empathy. He actually looks at the situation from Zanka's point of view, rather than being stuck in his own. And because of this, he's able to apologize and de-escalate the situation. And as a result, Zanka transforms from this mean and scary stranger to just a very chill and understanding guy, the exact kind of person you'd want to be your teacher. And yes, about 2 minutes later, Rudo ruins everything by horribly failing to smile and convey human emotion, which is without a doubt the scariest scene of the show so far, causing him to get embarrassed and revert back to his natural hostility and narrow-mindedness. But it did show that Rudo is a dynamic character who is capable of change and on his path to becoming a better person. There are a bunch of other examples of Rudo's character developing, like when Engine calls his goal of returning to the sphere to get revenge crappy, which makes Rudo think back to Regto's dying words and quickly change his goal to changing the world and sphere instead. Along with when Rudo discovers how much of a burden he is during the training excursion with Rio, forcing him to learn humility and appreciate the other cleaners, which are one of my favorite parts of the show. Each of the cleaners that we've met so far are so cool and clearly have their own backstories and purposes. The whole dynamic of Rudo and the rest of the cleaners really reminds me of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, especially when David Martinez first joins Main's group. Because Rudo is cast into this new and unpredictable world where there's this gang of people who all seem grimy and scary at first, but quickly turn out to be incredible people, like Engine especially. I want you to understand that Rudo is a complete brat, and I get why. He's lived his whole life with practically nothing, being hated and judged by everyone for the actions of his father. But for Engine to be this random stranger from the literal trash pit of the world that decides to save Rudo and take him under his wing is really cool. And yeah, he probably shouldn't have given him to kidnappers, but he was watching the whole time and had the ability to save him if need be. But another one of my favorite cleaners is Rio for a couple of reasons. 1, she's a huge upgrade to Chiwa and has more aura. 2, she's got a lot of personality while still being chill and calm under pressure. And 3, she's a beast that fights in one of the most unique ways I've ever seen. And her interactions with Rudo are very entertaining, because you can tell that Rudo is genuinely afraid and about to have a mental breakdown every time he sees her, which is fair enough. However, the very last thing I want to touch on is the specific lane in anime that gachiakuta inhabits. And that's the demographic of edgy and dark shows that are still at least somewhat shonen, like Chainsaw Man and Cyberpunk Edgerunners, both of which have a lot of shonen-esque themes of growing up and facing the world, but are in no way your average shonen. I don't think a child should watch either of them, but they still have some of that shonen essence. I mean, Chainsaw Man is literally published in Shonen Jump, but that's not to say that gachiakuta is the same as those shows at all. Because even though the show is grimy, it does have a lot of cussing and is a bit gory at times, it doesn't have people's heads exploding every 10 seconds like Cyberpunk, or have the main character's desire to fondle breast literally be the driving force of the plot like in Chainsaw Man. And that's why I think that gachiakuta is in the perfect place to become one of the next big anime. It can appeal to the countless people that are bored of the generic shonen and want darker and more realistic stories, where the MC actually kills people, and the power of friendship isn't always enough to save the day. But it also isn't a show that is wildly inappropriate and too edgy for the masses. It's the perfect middle ground to give the slightly older anime community what they've been craving for years, while still being palatable for younger and older audiences alike, along with people who are deep in anime and people who just want to check the show out. Which is why I truly believe that it easily has the potential to be one of, if not the most popular new gen anime.